Hi, I'm John DeDakis. I'm a novelist, a manuscript editor, a writing coach, and a former editor on CNN's The Situation Room with Wolf Blitzer. You're one to one with me, and I'm one to one with Laura Essay. Laura is a debut novelist, a lawyer, and a former assistant attorney general in Nebraska. Laura, welcome to One to One.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
This is the first time we've met. So often I do interviews with people I already know. So it's just sort of friends talking. So this will be an opportunity for us all to get to know you in real time. Um,
Perfect.
yeah, exactly. So tell us, let's go right to the book that you've written. It's Side Effects Are Minimal, and you deal with the opioid crisis, and it's a courtroom drama. I'll leave it there. You take it from there. What's it? What? Who's the protagonist? What's the story?
The story, it revolves around the opioid crisis in America, which is devastating. What makes my story different is that it doesn't deal with the addict or any of the addicts in the story that are referenced. It deals with the families. It deals with the physicians, the community, the court system, the pharmaceutical company, what's left behind after the addict has already overdosed, what is the community and the family is left with, how the doctors face this when they prescribed, what the pharmaceuticals take is on it, and just the whole situation of how opioids affect our country.
And how did you come up with the title? What's that based on?
It comes out of the mouth of the scientist who created the drug,
Mhm.
the deadly drug in this story.
Okay.
And he says he didn't release information because side effects are minimal.
Mhm.
They're not. They never are. And
And
that's the point.
how much? I mean, we just within the month, the Supreme Court, by a vote of 5-4, overturned the Purdue Pharma, bankruptcy settlement with the Sackler family, who produced the OxyContin. And
Mhm.
so, you must have been happy with that Supreme Court decision. Am I right?
Definitely, definitely. You cannot shield yourself when you create this situation. You're in a very powerful, as a pharmaceutical company, even as a physician as well, you're in a very powerful situation that to be able to do anything you want, say anything you want, create a scenario, and then walk away from it when things go bad, that is not right. That you can't do that. You have to have some liability for what you do.
And so, what does the Supreme Court ruling mean? It means, I guess, that the Sackler family can't shelter, that they can't hide behind bankruptcy, and
Right,
they've probably got $20 billion stashed away in different places.
right.
And so, go ahead.
My understanding was that with the payout, if it went through, they would pay all the money and then no one could come after them again.
Right.
They said, no, that's not going to happen. You are going to be held liable if people want to come after you.
So it could mean that they'll be basically all 20 billion of their dollars will be confiscated. I mean, is that a
It's
possibility?
possible. It's possible.
And what
I
would
mean, it's very
happen?
expensive to do that, but it's a nightmare.
And
But,
what and
if
what
I
would
lost
happen?
a family member,
What would happen to the money? How would it be? How would it be distributed? What would be done? Would it be done?
courts would decide that.
Uh-huh. It could be done. It could be used to mitigate addiction and things like that as
That would
well.
be that would be wonderful. That would be totally up to the court and the process to decide how that would pan out and
Okay.
when.
And it's my understanding that your book is to a certain extent based on some actual events. And I guess sort of
Mhm.
a companion question to this is, is there or is there not a comparison between your story and the Sackler Parma, Purdue Pharma case?
You can make a very close comparison to that because my story does deal with a big pharmaceutical company. They hid information on addiction. They were not forthcoming with what they knew. They were looking at the profit margin. And it's based not just on one true story, on so many true stories. This situation involving, you know, a teen, a young adult, regular a surgery that's needed. And then it gets onto opioids, and then it gets onto addiction, and then it's a downward spiral. That happens. 80% of the heroin addicts that we see, we all have the stereotypical idea of the person in the back alley, the heroin addict. 80% of those people began with a legal doctor's prescription. They didn't start out wanting to be a drug addict and a drug seeker. It could be you or me or one of our listeners. It could be anybody who goes in for a surgery.
And they get on heroin because it's so much cheaper than a
Exactly.
prescription. Is that it?
Right. Yep. That's exactly it. Because opioids are terribly expensive and heroin's terribly cheap. And an opiate, an opioid, it's all giving you the same thing.
Now, I've got on the screen here that in 1994, you suffered a traumatic brain injury when a drunk driver in a stolen vehicle smashed into your car. He was going like 120 miles an hour.
Yep.
And, the car seat in the back behind you saved your 4-year-old son. And you had a traumatic brain injury. So there must have been some pain involved. Did you take opioids? Were you prescribed opioids? How did you manage the pain?
I did not go home with opioids. I did not take Oxycontin. I did not take any of that. I took Tylenol, Advil, things of that nature. I did not have, well, no, I did, because I still have scars on my body. And I'm no tougher than you or anyone else, but we can get by without opioids. There are certain situations. I've never had cancer. I've never dealt with that kind of pain. That is an appropriate situation in many circumstances to be closely monitored, but that's where the opioids can come into the scene. There are a lot of situations to safely use those, but to send someone home from the hospital with 200 pills, that's not a safe thing, and that does happen.
Are we down? But the opioid crisis has been with us for a long time, and
Decades.
exactly. And so, haven't doctors become much more conscientious about overprescribing and about pushing these kinds of things? Haven't we come a long way?
Yes, yes. There's a chapter in my book that talks about the pendulum and how you would never get an opioid prior to 1980. I mean, they were very limited. And then it came out that, hey, they're not that addictive. We can do this for chronic pain. And then the pendulum swung the other way, and it's opiophobia. Everyone was getting opioids, and it was crazy. And then they started to realize what was happening at 50,000. I believe it was in 2015. I believe that was the year. 50,000 overdose deaths in that year. And so then it starts to swing back. And then it was opiophobia. So even if you were suffering from cancer, awful, they couldn't do it. They couldn't prescribe it. And now it's starting to even out somewhat. But there are still people that can walk out of a hospital with a handful of opioids.
Is it safe to say that they, at least in the early stages, they really did feel that it was not addictive, or did they know and cover it up?
I don't know for sure. I do know that the letter to the New England Journal of Medicine that has been referenced over 600 times as the start of the opioid epidemic stated that it's not addictive, but it was based on in-hospital care with 12 patients. And then they jumped on that. So do you know that it's not, or are you just wanting to have the magic pill to please your patients? And then the pharmaceuticals come in. So pharmaceutical companies, they can supply you. They saw, a gold mine.
What is it that makes it addictive?
I don't know. And it varies with every person, because some people, they take one pill and they're done. They can't stop. They want another, they want another, they want another. Other people can take some and then get off. And I'm sure we've all probably talked to somebody who took something post-operatively and it just made them feel awful, or it made them feel great. Right. And I mean, it varies on the person and their chemistry. I do know that if you've taken an opioid for more than 3 months, and you're still taking this, it actually changes the makeup of your brain and how you feel pain. So your pain's not the same. And so what are you feeling? It's all, and your brain, I'm pretty sure your brain doesn't, at least it's very difficult. It doesn't go back to the old brain. It chemically changes. I don't know if chemical is the right word, if that's the brain makeup, but I do know your brain changes. And that's also in my story, that your brain changes so you cannot make an educated decision. You listen to your doctor and then you get desperate and
Are
turn
we at
heroin.
are we at a point in society though where um, if you feel that you've been taking opioids and you're more dependent on them than that you should be, are we at a point where, the enlightened therapeutic community, the therapists, are able to help a person to change their behavior, come up with alternatives? I mean, isn't it very similar to a 12-step problem? Where alcoholism is dealt with through AA and stuff like that. Is there a way out of this?
I think so. I think there's fabulous people and fabulous programs that are working around the clock and diligently and making gains in doing this. The difference still is we can talk about AA. That's been around so much longer that to say, well, my dad's an alcoholic isn't as drastic and traumatizing as my dad's a drug addict. That's a whole new image we get in our head. People still don't want to admit it. And physicians are finding that cutting back on opioids and pain medication is extremely difficult because patients and or family get angry. They want it.
Mhm.
It works and they want it. And so they're fighting to keep it. I think taking that step, I've got a problem, and getting into some sort of help takes longer still. I don't think everyone's ready for that yet, to accept that it's there.
If you could wave a magic wand and have it all solved, how would we get there? What would our society look like if we were to get beyond this problem? How would we get beyond it?
I'm not a physician, so I'm not an expert in this area, but if you look at other countries, stop prescribing them. Tylenol is fine. Ibuprofen is fine. You're going to hurt. You can't go in and have knee replacement and just jog out of the hospital.
Right.
It's going to hurt. Take some Tylenol. Take ibuprofen for the inflammation. We have drugs that aren't opioids, but it's just become so accepted, I want to say maybe even common, that you get an opioid. Other countries are not quite as willing. I think that's why our opioid overdose issue is so much higher here in America.
Is it going down at all? The deaths?
Well, I don't have the 2024 statistics because when my book went to press, and I don't even know that 2024 is out or 2023, I have 2022. No, not at all. I even have in front of me from 2021 to 2022, it went from 105,000 overdose deaths to 109. It was like a 2% increase. So it hasn't as of that date. And I know now the cartel has pill presses so they can make pills that look just like that Zantac you're taking, but it's not Zantac. Everything looks identical, but they've put something else. So there's an inward attack on our healthcare medication situation also now.
So it's fentanyl and stuff like that, which is incredibly potent.
Awful.
So how are people dying? Is it suicide? Is it intentional overdoses? Is it accidental overdoses?
It's overdoses. But whether it's intentional or accidental, I'm leaning more towards accidental because you're just wanting one more high. I was trying to see what in 2022 there were 109,680 overdose deaths, more than a 2%
This is in 1 year.
increase.
This is in
Yeah,
1
1
year.
year. And in 2015, there were only 50,000. That was more than guns and car accidents combined. more people are dying from overdose than guns and cars and things that we find so horrific. But during our interview now, there are people dying. People
Isn't it
that
like
were alive when
like
we
40,
started.
40, 44 an hour or something like
Yeah,
that?
every day. Mhm.
Is legislation a solution? I mean, what is it that can happen to get doctors not to prescribe it so much?
I would think legislation would help, but by the same token, that brings in a whole entity of people that don't know and understand the medicine the way a medical physician does. Somebody
Right.
who practices pain medicine and does acute pain and chronic pain daily understand the situation much more. So maybe somebody in legislation getting with those people to see what they see can change the situation.
Right.
But I think it starts with a legal prescription not being prescribed. Since 80% of the problem starts right there, that's where we would start to fix it.
Right. Because I'm not hearing you say that the drug should be banned or anything like that.
No, no. There are situations. I keep going back to cancer pain because they've always been used, accepted for that type of situation. It's just in 1980, they then decided they could be used for chronic pain. There's other answers for chronic pain.
Right. Right. One of the things that I want to switch gears just briefly. Let me bring the book on again. Side effects are minimal. Laura Essay is the author. It's her debut novel. Her career was in law. She's a former assistant attorney general for the state of Nebraska, and of course, in that job, you became, I think, conversant and involved in fighting opioid addiction. Tell me a little bit about the cases that you were involved in that made you more conversant on this topic.
I actually, I can't, I don't have specific cases
Mhm.
that, because I was at the appellate level. So if it's an opioid problem, illegal drug problem, those don't come to the appellate level. They stay, at the first level, we'll say.
Mhm.
But I saw the situation, I saw the people. I've seen situations, I've worked with so many people, and I don't want to stereotype the homeless, and I don't want to stereotype poverty, and I don't want to stereotype those things. But when you start going on a downhill slide from being the CEO of your business, then you have your surgery, then you're on opioids, and then it just goes down from there. You do often end up in that situation at the homeless shelter, and so I saw how it affected people and
Mhm.
families. And I think that's where my story focuses a lot on what's left behind and how do we deal with this and the importance of changing it so that we don't fall apart as a society.
One of the things that I like about your writing is you basically do what I try to get my students to do, and that is use dialogue to advance the plot and deepen character. And you have a lot of dialogue in there. It's obviously
Do.
it's a courtroom drama and all that, but the 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 dialogue is conversational, and you're dealing with a complex issue, and yet it doesn't feel like a data dump. It feels like the facts are sprinkled in there normally in a conversation. And so what I want to do, we haven't practiced this, but at least I alerted you to what I wanted to do, is that I want to read a passage. I'll read one character's part and you'll read the other. And this is an example of how a good writer can take
Thank
uh,
you.
important arguments and facts and intersperse them in the dialogue, as opposed to just doing a data dump of expository stuff. So why don't you set up the scene, and then I'll begin, or you begin with that first character.
Okay. Westcott is the scientist at the pharmaceutical company who developed the drug that actually killed a girl. And it's going to court because dad is a huge entity in Philadelphia, and someone's going to pay for killing his daughter. And they're talking about Westcott, and he's the scientist. And it's the two attorneys for the pharmaceutical company who are debating their plan of action. And
Okay,
I'll
and
begin with
and tell me your character and tell me my
my
character.
character is Dana. Dana is not first chair, but she is power hungry and she is taken over. She's just going to school Landon on what he needs to do.
And Landon is who? Obviously,
He's the
I'll be
first chair.
reading
He's the
Landon.
attorney who's in charge of this.
Okay, and what are the dynamics between them?
Uh, Dana's a steamroller. She's
Okay,
like that with everyone.
and
And
what's Landon?
Landon is in-house counsel for the pharmaceutical company for Novo Anesthetic Systems, and he's a little more. He's decent, but he's just a little more soft-spoken. Everyone is around Dana.
Okay. So you start, and I'll do Landon. You do Dana.
And they're talking, like I said, about the scientist.
Okay.
Westcott isn't responsible for every doctor, said Dana. Mercedes-Benz makes an amazing automobile. It ranks as one of the highest in automobile safety. The manufacturer isn't responsible for the idiots who crash these cars and kill innocent people.
Not even close. We aren't in a car crash crisis. Landon rolled his eyes and his head at the same time. Exasperated with her childish analogies, he looked around the room as if in search of an escape. He was losing traction with Dana, as often occurred when she needed to spin an argument another direction.
We kind of are. Every day, hundreds of people die on our interstates.
People make informed decisions about buying cars, said Landon as he looked back at Dana. They decide what they want, what they can afford, and then they shop the dealerships. Landon grabbed material from the pocket of his briefcase and slapped it on the table in front of Dana. He shuffled through the additional papers as sweat glistened on both temples and his breathing quickened. With his irritation evident, he highlighted the first paragraph of an additional report and slid it in Dana's direction. People don't shop for opioids, said Landon. They're given opioids in difficult, often tragic situations. Sometimes these opioids come with guidance, often not. Landon slid the papers closer to Dana. As those reports show, in 2018 there were more than 50,000 overdose deaths from drugs, a lot more than car accidents on American roadways.
Statistics don't change the facts. Dana scooted the material back to Landon.
Statistics are the facts.
No, Landon, statistics are surface numbers. NAS isn't liable for every overdose outcome because some doctor was irresponsible. Westcott's extended release formulation carries less risk of addiction and was approved by the FDA.
FDA approval doesn't negate responsibility once the opioid hits the market. If anything, that responsibility increases. Landon gulped his black coffee. so, yeah, that's how, kids, that's how you do it.
But thank you. I'm glad it got the point across.
It did. And so tell me about the process. I mean, you've been a lawyer, and of course, lawyers make arguments, they write briefs. So writing has always been, in your wheelhouse. But writing
Definitely.
novels, that's a whole different thing. So talk about the transition from, being a lawyer to being a novelist.
It was similar in the beginning because we all are aware of the opioid crisis. We see it on the news, we see it in newspapers and magazines. And I started to wonder, how big is it? Is it being sensationalized? Is it just a media trend? And so I started to research, and that's where it was similar to in the legal system, your research. And I found things, and then I found situations, and then one situation led to another, that led to another person, that led to another. And then I felt like I was being sucked down the rabbit hole. And one thing and another and another and another. And I was shocked at how huge the opioid crisis really is and the type of people. It has no boundaries. There's no socioeconomic situation. There's no racial situation. There's no gender situation. It's everybody. And it's the young and the old. And the young are hugely involved. Teens abuse prescription drugs more than, outside of cannabis, outside of pot, more than cocaine, heroin, or meth. They abuse their opioid prescriptions. Their biggest
And in
access is
terms
their
of
parents' medicine cabinet.
in terms of your research, how did you keep yourself from doing a data dump? How did you figure out how to incorporate your research into the story?
I wanted to make it fiction because it wouldn't be a data dump. It would reach more people. It has a deeper connection and a personal relationship when it's a fiction story. When you relate to Claire or Dana or Landon or the people in the story, you can bring it back to your world. You can see how it fits around your world. And there's a lot of data out there, and people are getting it constantly. It's overload with our society because we have everything everywhere all the time. But this slows it down a bit so that you can understand it in a personal level. You can get to know the people involved, and ooh, that sounds just like Uncle George. I wonder if there's a problem.
Was that
And
hard to make? Was it hard to create fictional characters?
it was fun. I have to admit, though, it did start out, I had to envision people I knew. And so they started out as someone that I knew in my life when I described their mannerisms and their characteristics. And then I could wrap that around a fact, almost like a burrito. You just wrap it all up and there you have it. And people can digest that and see that. Okay, I see that. I understand that what type of person Clifford Satori is, because there's a Clifford Satori in a lot of people's lives. I know that kind of person. And so they can relate to him. And then they can relate to the pain he's feeling. And then they can relate to him wanting answers. And then they're angry at that pharmaceutical company and they want answers.
Is there
So
a
the next,
danger? Is there a danger, though, when you are drawing from personal experience and people you know, that you'll libel someone or that someone will recognize themselves?
nope, I change as soon as it gets close. As soon as it gets close, I change it. I just
What do
need
you
to
mean?
know them.
Change what?
Um, for instance, Alec, my son will kill me for this, but when I pictured him, I pictured my son. My son, I have a 33-year-old son, so I kind of pictured him tall and his haircut and that sort of thing. And then he talks strongly and his hands or things like that. There was nothing that Alec did that would be related to my son. He's not an attorney. He's not in healthcare. Well, he's in a different area of healthcare. So I never tied it that closely. I just needed to picture someone. I went to law school with a beautiful friend of mine, and I pictured her as Dana. I thought, okay, I pictured that. And she was the sweetest person everyone loved. Dana's a vixen. So I changed it enough. I'd never had any personality correlations that close that it would be a problem.
Mhm.
And I was very careful with the pharmaceutical company. I didn't put in any of the legalities that Purdue faced or Sacklers faced into mine, but I generalized, and that's everything that's in the newspaper. There's nothing there that you didn't read in the newspaper. I fictionalized it, and there's not a problem with that.
Did you take writing classes or go to writing workshops or writing conferences?
Nope, I did not. I went to one webinar where I met my publisher, and I think the most important thing is if you want to write is write, just do it. And you can then refine your skill by working with someone like you to find out, how to do a conversation and things like that. But I think a lot of people are scared to start. And I was asked that in a different interview, what would your advice be to someone? And I said, turn off your computer. Get away from where you play your games and pay your bills and search the web. Go somewhere with a piece of paper and a pen and let it happen. Whatever words come out, that's writing. Go back and fix it and change it and grow with it, but just let it start somewhere.
And are there any novelists or books that inspired you that you wanted to emulate? It was like, oh, they're doing it the way I think I'd like to do it.
This is going to sound so clichéic, I think, but my what I started out wanting was I wanted it to be for everybody. I wanted a freshman in college, a senior in high school, a 20-year-old to be able to read this. The busy mom who has about 10 minutes to read a day between all the kids. I wanted everyone to be able to read it. So I didn't want it to be overwhelming, too deep, too complex, too long, 600 words. I didn't want that because that would scare people away. And I needed this to get to as many people as I could. And I do believe that John Grisham, who's super popular in his courtroom dramas, is appealable to everybody. I don't know somebody who can't read him. And so I have several of his books. So I would reference those books just to make sure I wasn't getting too technical or too deep into a problem that I would lose people. I want it to be there for everyone because people need to know this.
Right.
I
Well,
felt
you
the topic was
succeeded.
that important.
You succeeded.
Thank you.
It's very accessible. And so then the next process question is planner or seat of the pantser or both? Pantser.
Seat of the pantser.
Explain that.
Yeah.
How does it work for you?
How I said, I just sat down. I wasn't sure what I was going to write about. And then I saw a lot of the news articles and thought, all right, this needs to be on the opioids. So let me just create a situation. Let me create a person who's on the drugs. I didn't know how that was going to happen. And so I then found out, and what was fun was that as I got into the story, and I don't know personally what it feels like to take drugs. And I don't know what it feels like to be an addict. So I didn't want to write it from that person's perspective because I don't know that. Mm-hmm. But I could know what it's like to see that person or to have that person in my family. Mm-hmm. None of my children did, so I was not in that position where I lost a child to that, but I can envision that better. Mm-hmm. And so I did that. And my great-grandfather, who I dedicated the book to, he was a writing professor and has Pence Hall at DePaul University, and I always wanted to be like Pa. And he said to me, just show up and let the story write itself. And so that's what I did. I had a few scenes that are gone. Those just didn't work at all. But I remember just being there. And yesterday when I worked on it, I had no idea what Dana was going to do today. And it floored me. I was like, holy moly, no way. Oh, she did it. Okay. And so there are some lighter, not lighter, but there's some other stories in the book that aren't just on the opioids.
Sure.
There's the issues between the attorneys and who did what to whom. Right. And I think that adds kind of a fun aspect, a kind of a reprieve to get out of the drug world a second, right, but yet still see the personalities of the characters and how they interact. And that was fun, but I just let it happen.
And how many drafts did it go through?
Oh my goodness. A lot. I spent a couple years in the research aspect. Mm-hmm. And then a lot of drafts, because a lot of just cleaning it up. But some of the story, when my publisher first read it, she did not like my subplot. Uh-huh. I'm like, what? That's like a third of my story. Yep. She'll publish it, but I just don't like that. It doesn't make sense to me unless you have a sequel based on that. And I did not. And so I said, okay. And I didn't know her real well. And I said, all right, now if I take all the time and write a whole new subplot, are you going to publish it? Or are you going to look at it then and say, it's not quite right? She said, if you do, and she gave me a curriculum of what I should do, then she'd publish it. It is so much better than it was. She was right. She was so right, because the subplot before, it was fine, but really didn't have any impact on the story.
Mm-hmm. Now, and how did you find this particular publisher?
I was at a webinar, a writing. It was during the COVID, so we didn't have the writing conferences. It was right. Webinars.
So she taught a class?
Yeah. It's Brooke Warner with She Writes Press. And at that time, you could send your manuscript to agents. Mm-hmm. And so I was all ready to do that with query letters and that. And they said, you get a medium-sized press, you could just go right to them. So I did. And she responded. She liked the story. And so I thought, that's great. And Simon Schuster now distributes with her. And so it's a fabulous win. It's a wonderful situation.
You must be pinching yourself.
I know. I really am. It's all amazing to me.
a lot of my writer friends talk about imposter syndrome, and that the second
Huge.
and that the second book is actually harder to write than the first. And even though the first was probably very hard, but it's like, okay, the first, I finally finished it. I don't think I can do it again. Are you going through that same thing? How do you deal with imposter syndrome? You obviously reacted when I brought that up.
Oh, it's huge. Yeah, I didn't think about it until someone said that's exactly what you have. Because I was also asked in an interview, so what do you feel like being a published author? I don't feel like I am. I have no idea. I guess until I go into a bookstore and I'm like, oh, there's mine. Okay. And then you start to feel like it. And
Mhm.
I'm working on my second, and it is difficult because you feel like there's expectations now. And I really, really like Side Effects Are Minimal. I'm so pleased with how it's come out. The reviews I've gotten are tremendous. I'm so happy with it. But you question, all right, can I do that again? Am I a one-man show? I don't know. So I don't know how you just stick with it. You just don't give up.
And
Keep
what you're
trying.
writing now, is that a continuation of the story, or another? Is it going to be
No,
what are you
it's
working on
different.
now?
I don't want to be, I'm not an expert in opioids. I don't want to be that.
Yeah,
But I wanted to bring a social issue to the forefront. I wanted to start the conversations. And that, I believe, is where change happens. That's where lives can change, when they start the conversation and make people aware of things. It's another social issue that is very forefront in our society
what's that?
that I want to, I don't want to say.
Oh, okay.
Well, no, but it revolves around teen suicide.
Hmm.
And it's teen suicide, which is very prevalent in our society, unfortunately. But it's also the issues that lead to that, what causes teens to go down that road.
Right, right.
We're talking about that.
How far along are you in the process?
First chapter.
Okay. So
First chapter.
you've done your research, or do you do that sort of
I'm still
as
doing,
you
I'm
go?
doing that. And the causes, I'm still doing that. I've written some on the parental reaction to the suicide. My brother committed suicide many years ago. And
Same
so
with
I
my
kind of,
sister. Yeah,
okay, see, I can write about that.
right,
And so I've worked on that part. And then, because I believe it's going to start, I believe, because who knows what's going to happen, but I
right,
believe it's going to start with that situation and then fill in the whys, what led the teen to that situation, and the
right,
factors, and where we can make those, help change those factors.
right. Oh man, I really hope you are able to do that, because it is
I don't so
such
too.
an important topic. And I mean, it sounds like you're on to something in terms of, trying to write about important issues. Are some of the characters from Side Effects, are they going to be in this other book, or is
Claire
this
is the,
okay?
yeah, the attorney's still going to be there. And I don't know exactly how the case is going to come out. It's going to also involve bullying in the
Good,
teen's life.
good,
And that's a huge issue right now
totally.
with
Yep,
teens. And the internet has led to devastating bullying situations. And so all those things are coming in. And those are what schools and families are trying to deal with on a daily basis. And
right,
unfortunately, we lose some teens to this situation.
exactly. Oh my goodness.
I write about heavy things.
But so do I, and I mean that's important. It's my first novel deals with suicide, and so you write what you know, and in my
Yeah.
case, and I think I hear the same thing. It's a catharsis. It's therapeutic
Yeah.
to be able to address these things, and now I mean, if I understand you correctly, you've got the time to really do this full time, pretty much,
Right,
right?
right, right. Yeah, exactly.
How long were you an assistant attorney general?
I was only assistant attorney general for a couple of years. I was working through family issues with, balancing everything. And I was a grant writer for the Arbor Day Foundation. And so I wanted to do more writing and gear myself towards that. And so I then went into private practice, just very small private practice, and was a grant writer. And then I loved writing. And then I wrote different wrote for different situations. I was a writer for the Manzanita School District. We lived there. And I always found something to write about. And I also truly wanted to do more of my volunteer work with the refugees. I was a court-appointed special advocate for foster children. And I wanted to spend more time helping those people and working that in around my writing.
Did you always want to be a lawyer? Is that where it started? As far as the career trajectory?
In honesty, I always wanted to be a writer, but that doesn't pay real well. I mean, I
This
can't
is
just go
true.
be a writer. and I didn't want to be a journalist.
Uh-huh.
I didn't want those situations dictating where I was running and writing about. And so I thought, a lawyer, you write brief. I mean, there's a lot of writing with that.
Right.
So I went into that. I didn't plan on going into criminal,
Right.
which is, as assistant attorney general. Those things just kind of came to me. And I enjoyed it quite a lot.
So how did you become a journalism professor? And why? Why would you want to do that?
Because the course I taught, it was journalism, but it was a business course in the journalism college, teaching people how to write day-to-day needed things, not texting, people have got, students have gotten so into texting,
Mhm.
and it was just creating situations and how to write a business plan, how to write a thank you letter, how to write a proposal, things that people need to know in their life. And so that was fun because, again, it was so needed. I always thought it should be a required course for college. If you're going to come out of college, you need to know basic writing skills for life.
And were you shocked at how poor the writing was among college students?
A little bit, yeah. I was. Just because they write for convenience. They text, they write, and it was fun. But if you're personable, they can be very good natured, because I would give them assignment right in the beginning, and I put them right up on the whiteboard because I gave a question. They were ridiculous answers. The way they were written just made no sense. And then I'd see who would fess up to that being theirs, and I'd get a "They're mine," and so that kind of lightened it for everyone. And I had them write a paper at the very beginning. And they wrote it with me. I didn't have AI issues at all when I was doing this.
Because you do it in class.
They did it in class. Phones, never. If
Right.
I saw you with your phone, you're leaving. You're not in my class. I was mean about that, but you don't need that. And so I had them write a paper the very first day. And then we had the course. Then I had them write the same topic the last day, and they compared the two. And it was so different, because writing's not that hard. That type of writing, you don't have to be super creative. There's certain rules, and you have to get the information out, but you can learn it. And they did, and they saw, oh gosh, this does make a difference.
Do you see yourself doing more teaching going forward?
I would like to do that. If there was an opportunity, I think I would like to even do more creative teaching, because like our conversation, this has been fun. And just having people realize they can do it. Because I was scared for a long time.
Right.
I thought, I'm not a novelist. I can't do that.
How did you get over the fear?
I sat down with a piece of paper and I thought, all right, I got to do something here. And then, I had the topic.
What were you afraid of?
Probably failure.
And why?
Or not knowing how. Not
Uh-huh.
knowing how. But you don't need to know how. Whatever you write, look at all the different types of writing. It's all writing.
Right.
You will find your type by doing it. You just have to put something on paper, and you'll discover what you write. And I knew I could write like grant writing. That's not creative. It's persuasive, because you need to be very persuasive with your grant proposals. And I think that came to me from my legal background. So I thought I was a decent grant writer. But then again, I just wanted the creativity was poking me. So I wanted to take that route.
Amazing. Let's throw the book up there again. It is Side Effects Are Minimal. Laura Essay is the author, and I should also note that you've got a dog.
I do, Riley. She sits with me through a lot of it. She knew most of the story before anyone else did.
Sort of your therapy writer dog, right?
Exactly, exactly.
Shoot. Anything else that you want to talk about that I haven't asked about?
Not that I think I'm just going back to, I think the importance of my book versus all the other opioid stories is that this doesn't, I mean, the the drug addicts already passed away when the story starts.
Mhm.
2 decades. They both, I mean, they have. It involves the families and the physicians and the pharmaceutical companies and the legal system and our whole society that we're left with. You and I have to deal with the opioid crisis. We're not addicts, but we are confronted with it. And it's up to us to start the conversation of how do we want to approach this problem to start finding answers. The addicts aren't going to find the answers. They're incapable of that. But we still can save lives just by starting the conversation and being aware, not living with our blinders on, but saying, hey, that might be an issue there. Maybe. And parents, like I said, teens have a huge increase in abusing prescription drugs. Their main source is their parents' medicine cabinets. We need to be more responsible. I mean, that's a little tiny step. If one person reads my story and thinks, I have my oxycodone for my surgery in that cabinet, and Kelly, my 16-year-old daughter, is in the house, maybe I need to be aware of that. That right there, because those situations, Kelly's a great straight A student a lot of times, but just they take there was a local story that I was told from a friend that a girl, 12 or 13, was home with a friend, and her friend had a headache. And she said, oh, my mom's got something. Got something, gave it to her, killed her. That happened in Omaha, Nebraska in the last 2 years. I can't remember the date. But those situations happen all over our country. So that's what I think the importance of my book is. It's an enjoyable read. You're going to relate to the characters. There's some antics going on with them that keep it not too heavy.
Mm-hmm.
And you're going to maybe, if it just gives you just a thought that maybe whatever the rest of the sentence is, that changes everything. And that is that's what I wanted out of the story.
So people can contact you through your website, right?
Yes. Yes, that'd be great.
LauraSA.com. This has been wonderful. I feel like I've made
Thank
a new
you.
friend.
Oh, you have. So have I. Thank you so much.
I'm John DeDakis. You've been one-to-one with me. That's my website, johndedakis.com. We've been talking with Laura Essay, who is a lawyer and a debut novelist. Laura, thank you very much. This has been fun.
Thank you. I've really enjoyed it.